All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for UC Riverside's second annual SBIR STTR Con 2020. I'm Misty Madero. I'm the Industry Contracts Officer and SBIR STTR Resource Center Manager at UC Riverside in the Office of Technology Partnerships. I want to start today by thanking our sponsors, the SBA and our Orange County Inland Empire SBDC network, Mike Daniel and Hannah Khalid, for their support in helping make this happen. Our conference is organized by our UCR EPIC Small Business Development Center and our SBIR STTR Resource Center. Our EPIC SBDC provides individualized mentorship and access to capital to technology entrepreneurs at no cost, as well as our Resource Center offers the following services to our clients to help submit winning proposals. If you're interested in joining or learning more about EPIC SBDC or our Resource Center, please reach out to Martin or Misty at these emails below and we will send you more information. And with that, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Martin Kleckner, entrepreneur in residence and SBIR STTR expert. Martin, welcome.
Welcome indeed, Misty. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to day number 3 of our conference. Very big honor to introduce you to this morning's agency, the National Institute of Nursing Research Extramural Science Program. And there are 5 areas of research of the NINR. And Kristopher, you can certainly correct me and update me on this. Heavy duty emphasis of research on symptom science, wellness, self-management, technology training, end-of-life and palliative care. Real big honor to introduce you to Dr. Kristopher Bough, who is the director of the NINR's SBIR and STTR program. He's been around the block. He also previously was the program director for the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Prior to that, focused on pharmacology at the FDA, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. Dr. Bough's research emphasis is on biomarkers and digital health technologies as well. So, Kristopher, for such a young-looking guy, you certainly have accomplished a lot in just a couple of years. So you must have started work around 5 or 6 years old or something like that. Anyway, great honor to have you join us, and we'll hand the baton over to you and look forward to hearing your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Misty. I appreciate the invite, and I'm very happy to have this chance to present to everyone on our program. So let me share my screen here real quick. Okay, can everyone see that? Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good to go.
Okay. So as Martin and Misty had mentioned, my name is Chris Bough. I'm the program director at the National Institute of Nursing Research. I had been I've been involved with the small business program for about 8 years now, and have covered a variety of different technologies, everything from early drug discovery to device discovery, assay development, and a whole host of things. This also includes some clinical development, and that is the portfolio now that I oversee at the National Institute of Nursing Research. In addition to the small business grants that we offer, we also have a complementary portfolio of a variety of other basic research grants, early translation in our technology program. And I'll give a couple of examples with that. So here's a couple things that I'd like to go over today. Here's an outline for my talk this morning. I'd like to briefly talk about the mission of the Institute and talk about some of the goals that we have for our program. Then discuss some of the science areas and the related technology topics that we're interested in, some of those science areas that Martin had mentioned. And then I'd like to go into some examples. I think really a good way to get a good understanding of the science areas and some of the technologies that we're interested in are to go through some of the examples that we have. And you can see not only about the technology development, but also some of the business development opportunities that businesses that we're working with. I'd like then to go into some of the other funding opportunities, like I mentioned, for our technology portfolio that can help to establish some of the proof of concept and early technology development from some of the knowledge that's been generated in literature or some early basic studies. So really fostering some of that early translation in business creation and growth. And then ultimately talk about some of the tips and resources that are available to new grantees or existing grantees, and some tips in terms of preparing a strong application and some of the information on how we make funding decisions. So the mission of the National Institute of Nursing Research is to promote and improve the health of individuals, families, and communities. That includes individual health and obviously some in how that influences population health and ultimately health policy as well. And to achieve this, we support and conduct clinical research that spans and integrates a variety of different biological and behavioral sciences. There are some grants in preclinical, but by and large, 90% of what we do is clinical research. And some of the research that we do ultimately provides that scientific basis for clinical practice. And as I'll talk about briefly, the technology portfolio really spans all of those areas. So again, as Martin had mentioned, the strategic plan that we have had for the past several years has involved primarily 4 major areas of science, and that is related to symptom science, which includes promoting personalized health strategies and wellness, and preventing chronic and acute illnesses, involving the patient or the individual with their care to improve their quality of life, and ultimately help to avoid the development of or chronic illnesses. And then end-of-life palliative care. This is one of the unique areas that NINR covers, and it basically is an area of looking at the science of compassion. One thing of note that I'd like to really emphasize is that the research that we do at the Institute is disease agnostic. And what I mean by that is some of the technologies that we develop that look at symptom science or look at promoting wellness and involve self-management can cover a variety of different diseases or conditions or injuries. Just to give you a few examples, there's some interventions that we are developing technologies surrounding that to prevent heart disease, approaches and technologies that can be used to manage and treat chronic pain. And an example like that might be, during end-of-life palliative care. We have some communication technologies that help to provide enhanced communication between a patient or an individual and their provider. And that can be both in a formal setting like a hospital, and also increasingly in an informal setting between a caregiver, parent, an uncle, a mother, a daughter, and whatever the case situation may be. So enhancing those tools or developing those tools that can enhance that communication is also a big area of what we do. And ultimately, Technology is cross-cutting. So we have a variety of different technologies in each of these areas that helps to promote our strategic goals. So now I'd like to talk about some of those goals. And first off, one of the goals that we have is translating some of those promising technologies to assist individuals and providers in promoting health, preventing acute and chronic disease, managing their symptoms, and really trying to engage patients in their own care. A lot of the early translation that we do with our small business program via both phase 1 and phase 2 grants are based on either some of the basic science that that investigator has completed, or, of course, some of the literature that has been established. And then the next goal we have for our small business and technology program is providing funding and support for the creation and development of those small businesses. So when you have that idea, we take that, we support with phase 1 grants, the creation of a small business or the support for conducting those preliminary studies to establish proof of concept and feasibility for our idea and get it off the ground. And then ultimately, to help ensure your success, we offer a variety of resources and training that can help facilitate an awardee in ultimately advancing them to the clinic. And what do I mean by that? We have programs that are technical assistance programs that can help you find your niche. There's commercialization accelerator programs where you can work with a individual consultant to advance your technology that can help you with navigate some of the path for regulatory approval, and then also help with commercial partnering and finding strategic partners to deliver your technology to the marketplace. And then I'd like to go into some of the science areas and specifically how they relate to some of the technology topics that we support and are looking for. So first off, are the technologies for assessment and management of systems. And on this slide, basically I'm going to show you a subset of topics within each of these major areas that I talked about before involved in our strategic plan. I'll give you a little bit of an expanded description in each of these areas that stem from that plan. And later on, like I said, I'm going to go into a few examples that I hope will help to clarify exactly the type of technologies and science that we're looking for. So the first would be in terms of that symptoms goal that I was talking about. And this would be, for example, assistive monitoring devices that can monitor symptoms in order to improve the quality of life for individuals with chronic diseases or conditions. And one example that I might give you is like an assistive robot system that can help an individual walk and regain mobility following an acute injury or a chronic disease. The second would be technologies to enhance self-management and clinical care. And some of those technologies we like to support are the development, test, and comparative effectiveness strategies. And some examples there would be mHealth tools that would promote patient and caregiver self-management, enhance some of that patient-provider communication, and ultimately help to reduce symptoms and reduce some of the need for more advanced and more expensive clinical care. Third would be technologies for health promotion and disease prevention. and specifically that's wellness. So the combination of wearables and health apps, when supported in conjunction with one another, that can be used to measure both biological, objective measures, biomarkers, that can be measured unobtrusively, and combining that, say, for example, with patient-reported outcomes, standardized patient-reported outcomes from the mHealth app, that can be used, especially when that data can be integrated together for the promotion of wellness and prevention of disease in a personalized fashion. And then finally, technologies that can be used for end-of-life or palliative care. And that could be, for example, home-based telehealth applications that can help instruct and provide care instructions for individuals and family caregivers in palliative and hospice care, say, for example, in remote locations or even rural health environments. So some of the technology priorities that we have, I've listed here, but they are by no means limited to these things. These are just some broad areas that we support in general. They include digital health technology, some of the technologies that I was just talking about, biosensors or wearables, point of care diagnostics or intervention tools, medical devices, patient-provider communication tools to enhance the quality of care, and medical robot systems, including augmented reality, virtual reality, and assistive devices. I want to also mention that in addition to this list, there's also a smaller list that we generate and are approved for each year for what's called the above the waiver topics. And these are considerations that applicants can apply for larger amounts than the traditional hard caps, the maximum levels for phase 1 and phase 2 grants. Typically, phase 1 grants are now around $250,000 for a 6-month to 1 year grant, and phase 2 up to $1.5 million for 2 to 3 years. If, for example, some of those studies are going to require larger budgets, you can request a waiver to exceed those budgets. Frequently, we do have some of those requests for phase 2 grants, especially when you're talking about applicants that are proposing larger clinical trials. These can be found on the NIH SBIR website, and I would encourage you just to reach out to me also for discussion prior to submitting an application with a large budget. So here I'd like to point out the breakdown of our current technology portfolio. And you can see here that our portfolio encompasses a variety of different technologies, including and fitting several scientific areas and several different types of technologies. So for example, we have assistive and monitoring devices, robot systems that can monitor symptoms, improve the quality of life, like I had mentioned before, technologies that can enhance self-management and clinical care, like some of the mHealth, telehealth tools, technologies that can promote wellness, such as the mHealth apps, wearables, medical devices, and then ultimately, also integrating a lot of that data into the EHR, health information technologies that can then ultimately try to, provide more of a personalized signature and possibly predict the risk of developing chronic disease or predict the potential injury. And a combination of that health information technology, and including a variety of these different technologies, you could integrate these disparate data elements to more comprehensively diagnose and monitor chronic disease. As you can imagine, this portfolio changes frequently because SBIR and STTR grants, especially phase 1, which we primarily focus on, are 6-month to 1 year grants. So the composition of this portfolio can change rapidly. And frequently we do portfolio analyses to make sure that we are balancing our efforts and making sure that we have balanced effort and investment in each of these types of technologies. And this is one of those areas that goes into our ultimate funding decisions, and I'll get into that in just a bit. So just a few examples, again, to try to give you a good idea of some of the things that we had funded. This is an example of a patient-provider communication tool. This was a phase 2 SBIR award that we had awarded. It was for, it's called the Noddle. It's a smart switch that enabled patients to access a nurse call system. And it was a nurse call system that patients could not necessarily generate the movement or force that they needed to call a nurse or to express their feelings or express the level of pain and so forth. And so basically using each of these additional add-ons like either a touch sensor or microphone, that this patient that was in this condition that had difficulty communicating could use tongue clicks or finger taps or even eye blinks to help communicate with the nurse that was providing that care in difficult situations. So again, that was one example of a phase 2 SBIR that we did. Another new phase 1 that we are now funding is for what's called the Acuvera room system. And this is a point of care technology that is currently being developed to monitor and help nurses prevent hospital-acquired pressure injuries. There is already a proof of concept for the system that they had developed this for monitoring unintended falls, and they used an artificial intelligence-based algorithm to predict potential bed exits and a risk for falling. They're now using this to monitor patient movement in bed, and nurses that frequently have to come in and take care of patients and move them every few hours, sometimes as frequently as every 2 hours. This type of system can remotely help nurses monitor them, keep track of the movements, identify potential pressure points, and help to prevent these hospital-acquired pressure injuries. In terms of STTR, Small Technology Transfer Research, this is an example of a phase 2 that we have funded. This is a recent award that we have given to a nurse with over 30 years of experience. She noticed that when you're wearing personal protective equipment, that is very difficult to communicate. And so she has developed and patented this Clearview mask to also enhance patient-provider communication. In her phase 1, she successfully developed and tested this prototype of this surgical N95 respirator, and now she established proof of concept for some outcomes of improving communication for hard of hearing patients. And obviously, as you can imagine, this has an increased significance during the current pandemic, not only in terms of its practical applicability, but also increased significance for the time. This is an example of an mHealth app. It's a journaling app that can be focused to help an individual focus on enhancing and reducing anxiety and helping to control their emotions. They're focused primarily on gratitude, and they help to they're developing this app early on in this phase 1 to help to reduce some of the anxiety and depression that may be associated with an individual. And especially if this could be combined with collection of other data elements, this mHealth app could provide medication adherence reminders. It could be used if it was also collecting data via wearable to monitor health, personalize self-health, self-care, and especially would be useful if it could have a well-defined use case. Obviously, something like this also has increased significance as during the pandemic, as we are limited in our visiting other relatives and are more isolated time. And then one final example I wanted to provide was another point of care technology. And this is an example of one of the R01s that we have. This is called the Clinician in the Loop, and it's currently being used to study patient health and promote wellness and encourage self-care in their homes. It measures, sensors are placed in various different rooms. They monitor activity, walking speed, sleep patterns, bed-toilet transitions. They help to identify some of these concerns, and through validation with providers, they can help to monitor older individuals that might be living alone with chronic conditions. They can help encourage them and provide them with interventions. And ultimately, this is now gone through some iterative designs, and participants have felt that the technology is very valuable in helping them detect, make them aware of some steps that they can take to enhance their health. I also wanted to mention this because frequently academicians that have begun to develop this technology and establish its proof of concept in basic research also have an idea of the potential small business spin-out, or developing this for commercialization via strategic partnership with a small business. These R01s typically help to study the basic science aspects of this technology. R01s typically span over 3 to 5 years, but I want to point out that small businesses are eligible to apply for these types of research grants to help basically with the knowledge generation and establish the scientific foundation for the commercialization of a product or service down the road. Finally, I want to talk about some funding opportunities, other funding opportunities that small businesses consider. We currently offer one R01 for digital healthcare interventions. We also offer an R21, which is a 2-year award for the development of health tools. We also offer another R01 that is addressing caregiver symptoms through technological tools. And then also we offer administrative supplements to promote diversity in small business grants. And you can stay informed with some of these funding opportunities by subscribing to our email updates. You can visit our website to do that. And you can also follow us on Twitter. We will frequently retweet some of the NIH SBIR announcements, but I would also consider and encourage you to consider subscribing and following the larger NIH SBIR site, because they also offer training opportunities for new small businesses, as well as funding opportunities that you could take advantage of. And then finally, in terms of preparing a good application, especially for new applicants, one of the programs that NINR now participates in is the Applicant Assistant Program. This is for new Phase 1 grantees that have never had an SBIR grant in the past. And this is a competitive program. You basically submit an application through a portal. It's 5 to 6 pages. And if you are accepted, then the Institute basically picks up the tab for a consultant to help you prepare and submit your Phase 1 SBIR or STTR app. The NIH also lists some SBIR and STTR sample applications. That includes both the Phase 1, the Phase 2, as well as fast tracks. And the fast tracks are the Phase 1 and Phase 2 combined applications. Some of those sample applications are available. I would also encourage small businesses or academicians who are considering starting small businesses to check out NIH's study section grant proposal review. The Center for Scientific Review at the NIH has posted a YouTube video on what a review group looks like. And so to get an insight into the questions, concerns, issues that are raised during a review, a small business applicant can get a good understanding of what sorts of issues, questions, and so forth need to be considered when they're putting together their application. Ultimately, that will help you put together a stronger application. The Center for Scientific Review also offers what's called the Assisted Referral Tool. And this is a text mining tool that if you plug in your abstract and title for the application that you're putting together, it will return a list of review groups that may be most relevant to your technology. I wanted to point this out because you can select those 1 or 2 or 3 groups that you feel would be good for review, give you the most relevant review for your application, and recommend that in your application. And the Center for Scientific Review will consider that, and frequently does consider that, in having your application assigned to that review to ensure that your technology is most appropriately reviewed. And then finally, also considering a commercialization plan. As you may be aware, phase 1s do not require a commercialization plan, but it is always good to have that plan thought about down the road. And certainly for phase 2, commercialization plan is equally weighted in terms of the research strategy. So having that resource, thinking about how to write a good commercialization plan is valuable. This can be found on the NIH SBIR website. And it's a template that you can go by for some things that you can consider. And again, putting together a strong application. Now, I would also encourage you, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, email me. I have collected a variety of different tips for preparing a good application, some things that you might want to consider, some things that you might not want to consider, and also some other resources that we offer. Unfortunately, our website is under development, so there's some updates that are being made to it right now. So again, if you just reach out to me and you want to contact me, I'm more than happy to help out with that. And finally, our funding decisions. Ultimately, after that review, we weigh the scientific and technical merit. We think about the potential for commercialization. We think about ultimately the public health impact longer term. We also think about our program priorities, the current portfolio balance that I mentioned and highlighted before on the slide above, and the availability for funds. Also for phase 2 applicants, we also consider the results of phase 1 in how they establish technical feasibility and the outlook for commercial feasibility. And so with that, I will take questions. And please, again, do not hesitate to reach out to me with any questions that you may have.
Kristopher, thank you very much indeed. Very informative. I learned a lot myself. So normally I have dozens and dozens of questions, and so what else is new? But let's flip over to those in the audience first. And iNone, Kristopher, has a question about your cutoff score. Do you have a cutoff score at the NINR?
We do not. For the research grants, they typically, and you'll find that most of the institutes at the NIH do have a pay line or a cutoff score. There is some wiggle room around that. For the small business grants, no, we do not have a hard and fast cutoff score. There's certain assessments that we will go through, and we will take a look at administratively some of that review, those technical and scientific merit reviews that come back from that review study section. And then we will also make our own independent judgment in terms of weighing some of the commercialization, how it fits our portfolio, and so forth. So there's no hard and fast cutoff or priority score that we go by. We weigh in all those different factors in addition to the scoring.
Got it. Thanks, Kristopher. And Dotan, in answer to your question, since this is addressed to me personally, just reach out to me after the conference or anytime after we're through today, and I'll I'll be very happy to chat with you about that. And Mina, you had a question about the percentage, Kristopher, of funded NIN grants focusing on developing or advancing technologies that have been utilized currently in hospitals and medical centers. Do you keep stats on that?
Somewhat. It depends though, because we also consider the use case. And the different use cases, you know, may be adapted for different things. So one example might be some of those sensors that I talked about. You know, they could be already developed and used in a formal care situation. But if that's the case and the small business wants to, you know, pivot a little bit and begin to develop that for home healthcare, that would be something that we would also support. In terms of, you know, advancing, and it's nice to already have that proof of concept for that technology.
Got it. Thanks, Kristopher. I know, could I impose on you to rephrase that question? I'm not exactly certain what you're asking, and then I promise I'll get back to you. Hey, Gene, welcome back. And your question is, how is overlap handled between other NIH organizations? Good thinking, Gene. I was going to ask Kristopher the same thing, and maybe we'll blend our questions together. Anyway, some technologies are so general, says Gene, that they may be used by NINR as well as NIA and so forth. And let me, just to add to that, I was thinking the same thing, actually, Kristopher. You had mentioned, I believe, that you had or were open to funding, for example, solutions for caregivers. And we do know that the NIA has funded a few of those projects already. Some of our EPIC SBDC clients have indeed been funded there. I also noticed some overlap. And are there any distinguishing characteristics in terms of what the NINR is looking for, as opposed to, say, the National Institute of Aging, you know, going back to the caregiver thing, or National Heart, Lung, Blood Disorders Institute and so forth? You had mentioned that you funded heart projects, those types of things, and so on.
Yeah, that's a great question. And because we are disease agnostic, we do consider some of those other indications in some of those disease areas. When you submit an application, it can be primarily assigned to, let's say, the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and secondarily assigned to NINR. And what that means, there is overlap. And when the application is submitted and the Center for Scientific Review assigns it to both of those institutes, they can both consider that application for funding. So, for example, if the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute is primarily, if that application is assigned to that primarily, and they choose, they don't have the resources, they choose not to fund it, whatever the case may be, we can work with the other program officers if there is a need, or, you know, whatever the case may be for us, to consider that for our portfolio. So we can, in that case, look at some of the overlap and commonalities for applications that may fit different areas, that may fall in different areas. And I'll tell you that frequently we have overlap with, like you said, Martin, the National Institute on Aging is a big one.
Yep.
The National Institute on Heart, Lung, and Blood, the National Institute on Child Health, Deafness, and Heart, and I'm forgetting the last one, but yeah.
Well, I was thinking of NINDS, for example. You know, I think you had, especially with your heavy-duty emphasis on self-management for devices and so forth. You know, I'm just thinking of all of the clients that we've been working with, and one has an exoskeleton solution for those who have sustained either strokes or athletic injuries or other.
Yeah.
So I was watching with great interest, and phooey, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a fantastic POC device that looked very intriguing, and I immediately flipped on to that particular exoskeletal solution. And then likewise, we have a current client that has a system for visually impaired individuals, a sonar location system and so forth, which would ideally, if all milestones and evidence is accomplished, replace the white cane. And I wondered if those types of projects may also be a fit for consideration with the NINR.
They would. There's sometimes, you know, there's definitely overlap, and we would consider some of those. Sometimes there's also very subtle differences depending on the stage of development and the use case that we consider and weigh differently. And it also depends on our portfolio. So some of the neurological indications, like your products for neurological indication, may not, you know, they may be a better fit for some of that, you know, like stroke, you know, or management of, epilepsy, something like that. Those types of more a unique and neurologically focused indication and use case would be a better fit for NINDS. We would potentially consider it, but usually we're looking for really more symptom management technologies and wellness and improve of quality of life. So, but that we would definitely consider some of those things. I mentioned point of development because also lots of times, and just going back to your exoskeleton example, sometimes if the health application for technology like that is a little bit further down the road, and they're really trying to develop the technology initially, something like that might be more, in my opinion, more relevant for NSF in establishing the engineering components of that exoskeleton. And then ultimately, potentially once it has a clear use case and health outcome that it's going to be looking for, then I think it could be something that we would consider. So more of the basic engineering, we would not necessarily fund. It has to have a clear clinical use case.
Got it. Okay. So before I move on to another topic, I wanted to make certain that I heard it rather than invent it. You had mentioned working jointly with another brother, sister agency and so forth. Does that mean joint funding? Did I hear that, or did I just invent that?
No, that's another great question. So what my experience has been is that 90% of the portfolios that we have for each of the institutes falls in the granting area. And typically the institute will just fund the entire grant at one place. So if there's overlap, then that one institute wants to, let's say it primarily assigned to an HLBI, Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. They choose not to fund it, but we choose to. We will pay that grant entirely if it comes to us. There's not necessarily co-funding. That's different for contracts. Sometimes there's a shared interest in the development of a product that ultimately the institutes would have benefit collectively, and so they would co-fund a contract. And let me give you an example. So there was the development of a chip, a genotyping chip that could be used for assessing addiction. That was used both at the National Institute on Drug Abuse and the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse. Both had interest in having that chip for use in research. We co-funded that contract because we could both offer it to researchers. So the short of it is, typically the co-funding is for contracts. Grants are typically funded at an institution in full.
Got it. Okay. How about foundations, by the way, before I flip into Jared's question here? My reason for asking that one, Kristopher, is we have a client that had a phase 1 that was funded. I do not know the specifics anymore. It's been a while. NIDDK and the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. And I wondered if that is something that you also consider in terms of again, some sort of a structure for joint funding with foundations.
So you're saying like whether we would consider funding that would be something that would have matching funding from a foundation?
Something that might be of interest to both you and that foundation, and both of you are seriously considering offering funding to take care of proof of concept feasibility matters in a phase 1 format.
Yeah, in fact, I would say that's a big strength. If there is an investment, outside investment of funds from a foundation like that, that would be something that would add significance and a big strength in terms of our funding decision.
Fantastic. Okay, I better pick up my speed here. I've been too selfish with my own questions here. But Jared, your question is a general one, and that's perfectly okay. Jared, Kristopher, is working on an early cancer screening. It's not a yes/no diagnostic. It's an in-office test that would be administered by nurses, other health professionals, PAs, prospectively, and so forth. Those types of transformative innovations, hopefully, would that be something that you might consider? You're going to get a heck of a lot of questions, by the way, and I've got this idea. Is this something that maybe I should submit to you for your consideration?
Sure. That would probably be considered first at cancer, the National Cancer Institute.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be one of those applications that could fall for overlap with NINR. You know, like you've mentioned, Martin, that there is overlap for NINR because we are disease agnostic for some of those other institutes.
Got it.
Because we would be secondarily assigned to that, it would fall on the radar for both of our institutes. And if cancer didn't pick it up, we would consider it.
Fantastic. And hey, Juana, welcome back as well. And Juana had a question with regard to Kristopher, does the NINR, do you have a special score or a track perhaps for research projects that target minorities or projects submitted by women, minorities, communities, just communities with disadvantaged, say, populations and so forth? Any special consideration or scoring?
We don't have any specific scoring, but we do encourage, applications from those women-owned businesses, socially and economically disadvantaged businesses, and so forth. So that is definitely a big factor that we consider.
Terrific. Jasmika wants to know whether or not you have funded, and do you have examples of child health related projects of recent vintage? Anything of interest there or focus?
Yes, I guess there would be two examples. Number one, would be a mHealth app that we have that is focused on. It's also a web-based platform for telehealth, but it is the development of this platform that enhances provider adolescent communication and education about teen pregnancy.
Got it. And another question from Jean. Jean, I certainly have an answer for that, but you're not asking me, you're asking Kristopher here. So anyway, Jean's question is his question is, he's got an application and he had been focusing on a specific disease or disorder. He's wondering after hearing you, should he make his application more generalized, that is to say, not targeting a specific disease or disorder? And for example, he's thinking of a monitoring system for Alzheimer's patients. Would it be more realistic, or would his chances be improved if he generalized that to address, say, remote patients?
Yeah, I would say no. And I would say that it's been my experience that if there's not a specific use case, and the more detailed path that you can provide for the development of your technology, especially that makes the most sense preliminarily, That is what's going to help reviewers understand the story and the product that you're trying to develop. So if it has, an aging, a use for an aging population, I would suggest that you focus on that, for that aging use, use in an elderly population. And then down the road, consider adding to, say a Parkinson's patient or whatever another use case that would add value to your technology in your business. But you have already established proof of concept in that one population, in that specific use case. So the more specific you can tell your story and convince reviewers and potentially outside investors of the usefulness of your technology, down the road, you can always expand it.
Terrific. Okay, that was pretty much my thinking as well. And Einan, you were asking about NIN and POC devices. Kristopher had given several examples on POC devices that the NINR has funded. So take a look at his available slides when we publish them, or get on the NINR site, and I can work with you on that, Einan, and we can talk a little bit further on POC. And then Jasminka, Kristopher, had a question, which I probably should have asked early on. Contracts or only grants, both? What do you fund?
We focus on grants.
Got it. Okay. No contracts.
No, not at this time.
Oh, okay. One final question, and I think this may be the last one. I know that Misty's going to send an electric shock over to me if I don't stop asking all these questions. But Jasminka, this is our final question. I think we need to release you to go meet with your one-on-one appointments. But Jasminka was asking, she said, thanks for being disease agnostic. You're welcome. Does the PI team or end user need to be a nurse in order to be considered for funding?
Thank you very much for that question. And the answer is no.
No.
The
Okay.
applicant does not have to be a nurse. The end user does not have to be a nurse.
Okay. Kristopher, we've done it again. We've taken a whole hour and it went by as if it was a minute or two. Mm-hmm. And we are very grateful that you were able to join us. And I know that you have a bunch of one-on-one appointments that you need to get to. So thank you. Very grateful. Much appreciate your time. Very valuable information. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage everybody, Kristopher, you had offered 6 or 7 or a bunch of very helpful guidance and support sites and so forth that I think we all need to take a look at, and we'll learn a lot more from that. So Kristopher, very much indeed, thank you. Grateful for your time today.
My pleasure.
And we will let you go, and Hannah or someone